Welcome to The Intersection by Leyden. So excited to bring in a partner of ours, Sean Dauber. And Sean is from the Horton Group, which is part of
Marsh
McLennan, exactly. And so that's new. So we'll dive into that a little bit. But Sean is health benefits with the Horton Group, and they are not a vendor of ours. They are truly a partner. So very excited to dive in with Sean, and welcome to The Intersection, Sean.
Thank you, RJ. Appreciate it. Yeah, we've been a long-term partner of Leyden for, I think, since 2011.
Holy cow! Well before me.
Yeah, long
so
time.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that's good. That's really good. So again, just a little bit of a background about the intersection, right? So it's this idea of, kind of the intersection of business, philanthropy, and civic engagement, right? And I know, we've gotten to know each other over the 5 years that I've been at Leyden, and that you've worked with us and been a partner in so many levels, really taking care of our people, right? And ultimately, that's our goal, right? Is when you and I get together, and and I just know that, your mission, right? Your Sean Dauber mission aligns very well with a lot of your nonprofit partners, right? So I want to kind of unpack that a little bit, right? But we didn't. You were laughing when we first sat down that I'm an insurance guy. I'm not sure why you even had me on this, right? But I think there's so much more to these industries, these jobs that folks don't even know about. So, so I'm curious, kind of how did you end up in insurance, right? I don't know how many of us kind of raise our hand like, oh, this is what I want to do when I grow up, right? So yeah, how'd you get there?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Today, there's a lot more programs in schools that have insurance programs, right? So Illinois State University, different schools throughout the country have really crafted like risk management programs. But when I was coming of age, I'm dating myself here, there weren't really any risk management programs.
No.
So my background was information technology.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's what I did. And then I came out and I worked for a manufacturing company in Indiana and worked in their IT department. And at the time, there was a number of projects going on, and a number of individuals would come in around the country that were salespeople, and they kind of befriended me. And just because I was the younger one, I was probably more curious and more apt to want to help.
Yeah. Ask questions and right.
So
and answer questions, right?
Yeah. So it worked. It was a kind of a perfect storm. And then I kind of migrated a little bit more, got a little bit more involved in marketing and some other things. But I realized that the information technology, although I liked it, I found it a little stale.
Interesting.
So I kind of migrated away, and then I had some contacts here back in Chicago that asked me to come join them in their insurance operations, and I did that. But at the time, I had no interest in insurance. I'm like, insurance? I'm like, absolutely not.
No.
That is not something that doesn't sound at all sexy to me.
Right,
I am
right.
not doing that.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's how I find my way to insurance, and
right.
then Horton for the last, 8, and now Marsh McLennan the last, 18 years.
Right. That's so great, right?
Yeah.
And so, when you look at your portfolio of clients, right, and I know you have some for-profit, some nonprofit, how do you balance that, right? And I think, that so much of kind of what we do and how we get here is this, you're really good at this, right? You're present, you're proximate, right? So, how do you manage those worlds as you're serving them?
Yeah, I mean, each client's very different, right? And so I think when we come across, there's a lot of commoditization that occurs in our industry.
Right.
Everyone wants to treat everybody the same. But you realize companies are people.
Doesn't really work, right?
And it doesn't really work that way. And people are all different, and companies are all very different. And they all have different kind of philosophies and ethos around how they want to approach their benefits or how they treat their employees. So I think it's really us meeting the client at that intersection.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
To really say, like, well, how do we balance that tightrope between employee satisfaction and cost? I think specifically when it comes to nonprofits, the balance there really is that they oftentimes don't have any ability to kind of raise their prices.
No.
And that's very different than a for-profit client that might have just a richer margins. They might be able to raise their prices. They might be able to address those cost increases a different way.
Right.
So I think as a practitioner, I think for most of our colleagues that work in the space, I think the nonprofits are always tug at our heartstrings a little bit, because it's really like, okay, this is an increase they're going to have. How do they address the increase? Because the only way they really can, they're not getting any more money from the state.
Right. No, we know that.
And so, and they can't raise their product or their pricing.
Right.
So what's left is really either through the philanthropic efforts.
Right.
And so it's really a struggle. And then the health insurance, as we know, is just the nature of what we see today is so challenging for all employers, but the nonprofits generally is really a struggle.
Yeah. How is that how is the journey, right, of the last couple of years or last several years, right? And in the healthcare journey of, I'm trying to serve my client, the company, but kind of at what cost maybe to the individual, to the employees, right? And how are you managing that? Because I think you do it really well for us, but I know that you don't take it for granted.
Yeah, I think from my viewpoint, I think it really just comes down to when you think about cost, we see the challenge for employees really being kind of bifurcated in two areas, right? There's employees that just don't really use the health plan. And we all know this, right? So when we came of age, when you first got employed by a firm, they might say we have this great benefit package. You're like, great. But people that are young, generally, unless they have congenital issues, when they're young, they don't really value the benefits as much because they don't use it.
Right, frankly.
Right? So younger people that aren't starting families, and it's not, I kind of always goof around, but like at age 50, all hell breaks loose for most employees, because that's when they're really recognizing the value of the benefits and using it. So the employee education and just literacy on healthcare is very low.
Right.
And so today, just the Byzantine nature of like health insurance. I mean, you've got, challenges of multi-generational workforces, right? Trying to address that. So you have young people might be coming off their parents' plan.
Right.
Don't really use the benefits, don't value it that much.
Right.
Other people have congenital issues or they have significant health issues. And that's really been, I think, a real challenge for us to try to address the multi-generational needs, but then also just the more expensive healthcare and kind of episodic events that are occurring with employees.
That kind of, the outliers that drive a lot of the big cost, if you will, right? So as the multi-generational, has that changed over the course of your time in this?
Yeah, I think now it's more diverse than it was before, just because there's older people that are in the workforce and they're challenged with, do we go to Medicare? And because the cost increases are continuing to just increase, I think that calculus becomes more challenging for people.
Oh, interesting.
So now people have to really evaluate, do I stay on my employer's plan? Do I take my spouse's plan? Where do I put the kids?
Right.
And those cost pressures and plan changes continually occurring, deductibles and all these things. I mean, I think it's really hard for people that have low literacy on this, and it's really healthcare financing.
Right.
Which plan's best for me? Which plan's best for my spouse? And of course, some people go uninsured, which is always challenging.
Which is terrible, right? And
But the costs are when you think about the average cost for families today, a family premium is well over $20,000 annually.
Right.
And it's going up every year.
Right. It ain't coming down, as they say, right? No. Yeah.
And people aren't really becoming healthier.
Right. And kind of sad, right? That it hasn't kickstarted that movement that I think so much of us have talked about over the years, right? Kind of the the pro health benefits, right? That was a thing back in the day, right? And right, so they'll underwrite the health club or they'll underwrite the annual exams and do different things along those lines, and it hasn't kind of provided that kick in the pants for folks, right?
Yeah, we see it through all the data, right? So for some clients we get a lot of data on, other clients we don't, but every time there's a benefit that might be occurring in the health system where, hey, this is going to be lower cost, and maybe it's, for example, telehealth or urgent care, pretty low acuity issues.
Right.
But then the compounded nature of health insurance is just something else pops up, and so now it's just like the mental health issues are really significant, behavioral health. It was just nothing that we really talked about a decade
back in
ago.
the day. Right.
And now we see it across all health plans, just the utilization for mental health is. So that's kind of replaced any savings that you would have received from generic drugs or for something else becoming lower cost.
Right.
MRIs, okay, add 3 or 4 individuals on a plan that are using mental health at a level that never occurred 10 years ago, and you have higher costs again.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting, right? So for you and Horton Group was independent, right? I'll call it independent. That's probably not the right term, but
it was.
Okay.
It is,
and then has it been 2 years, 3 years now with Marsh McLennan?
It's nearing 2 years.
Nearing
August
2 years,
will be 2 years. Yeah.
So So how has that been, right? Because now you're part of this behemoth, right? And you got a lot of bandwidth, I would imagine, right? But that also comes with you also got people over your shoulder, right?
Actually, it's been very positive in many respects. I mean, Marsh does a very good job. They are very large.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 100,000 employees.
Right.
In multiple countries throughout the world.
Right.
So I think, partly they've done a very good job of, I think, really segmenting their businesses, saying, like, we have some consulting services that are really designed for very, very large employers, 10,000, 20,000 employees.
Wow, yeah.
Then they have a whole nother segment, which we're part of, which is the Marsh McLennan agencies. So throughout the country, they've acquired agencies over several years, and they've kind of really crafted an environment that allows those agencies to operate the way they operate and not really commingle them with the other entities that really do consulting or doing things for, especially when you have consulting and you have insurance and operations for some global companies, and conglomerates. I mean, it's not really what my forte is or what we do at the Horton Group, but that's their expertise. But they've done a very good job, I think, of crafting environments that allow them both to be successful under the Marsh brand.
Right.
So that's been very positive. The challenging thing for me, and we talked about this jokingly, is just it's just moving my cheese.
Right.
Exactly. The technology changes this, and it seems that they're not that significant. But
those of us of a certain age, right?
I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to go through. You're changing the printers again. Changing.
What exactly?
And that's interesting because we do see that. Like the younger employees adapt to that much quicker.
It's really not fair,
I
right?
Know. I know. It's like, really? I just got used to this.
Exactly.
But they've been very supportive. It's a very good culture. Very, very client focused around how do we just make the experience for clients better.
Yeah.
So it's a very good energy, I think.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So that's been very positive.
Yeah. That's great. And I've noticed. And is this the long-term plan that you'll remain the Horton Group?
Yeah, we're slowly migrating. It's just the transition.
Right.
The Horton Group, part of MMA.
Right.
And then eventually we'll just be Marsh McLennan agencies. And
and
we'll really just be Marsh.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Because we had one of our guests previously was a woman from Wintrust, and Wintrust has their big brand Wintrust, but then also their local banks are the neighborhood, Oak Park Bank, for instance, or Hinsdale Bank, right? And they keep, it's all one umbrella, right? So I wondered if maybe Marsh McLennan kind of looked at that the same way, like the Horton Group has.
It seems like they're very flexible that way with us.
Okay, yeah.
However, I think we also see that there's some value in just having some consistent approach to how we brand, how we go to market.
Right, yeah.
Because sometimes it can get a little confusing. I mean, you just got logos everywhere, and you're like, all right, what am I using? What am I presenting?
Right. Who am I? Right.
Yeah. So we're just like, let's just move forward with just to have consistency.
Right.
And I think it's easier for new employees and teams to adapt to that.
Oh,
as well.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
So right now we're kind of co-branded.
Okay.
But I would imagine over the next few years we'll just move forward to be Marsh McLennan agencies.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Right.
And they've got different divisions. They have a division in the Midwest. They've got division out east. They got division in the West. So, but culturally we've found it to be a pretty good match.
That's great.
It's been good.
Good.
Yeah.
So when you think about kind of the piece of the business and philanthropy side, right? And I mean it when I say that I don't look at you or the Horton Group, Marsh McLennan Agency, as a vendor, right? And truly, you're involved in our mission, right? And you support what we do, personally and professionally. You support what we do, whether it's through the golf outing or through our Mighty Oak or whatever it might be. How does that, like, first let's take Sean's perspective, right? And what do you bring to the table there, right? Like, you're involved, you're engaged, right? And you're a member of the community, and I know that giving back is a big part of who you are. So, just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we see our connection to clients, we do want it to be more than just transactional. So I appreciate those comments, so it does make me feel good that you see it as more of just, hey, it's just another relationship.
Right.
And I think in professional services, our goal is always to be a partner, right? We want to be there in the good times and the bad times.
Right.
And we know clients have lots of choices, right? They can readily make a choice. It's not that hard just to have a different consultant come in and handle the brokerage.
True. Right.
But all of our clients have needs and have different missions,
Yeah.
right? And it could just be even a privately held organization that we work with, and they're very connected to some charity event, that they may have been part of for a very long time.
Right.
And so, of course, we always have to balance that.
Right.
Right, because all of our clients have needs, and of course, there's limited resources, and how do we balance that across all of our clients?
Right. Right.
The nonprofit space, I think, is very enjoyable because you guys are so mission driven in terms of what you do and how you approach it, and we also know oftentimes very resource
Constrained, if you will,
yeah.
right?
And so for us to be able to step in and help, and I think Horton and including Marsh are very participative in that process.
Right.
And there's a structure we have to go through with Marsh,
Of course.
just to make sure we're compliant, because throughout all the charity and the donations that occur and things that there's involvement, they got to make sure that we're dotting every I, crossing every T, make sure that we're not doing this. There's no quid pro quo.
Right.
But they've been very supportive in that. So we do really like to be involved with our clients in that regard. Sometimes it's just a question of time too.
Right.
You have multiple clients, you have multiple needs, and how do you have enough time to support all of them in the same way?
Right.
And we just can't.
Yeah.
So sometimes you feel bad about that. You'd like to help everybody meaningfully the same way, but we just can't.
Right. Yeah. So how do you look at your hours? Right. We had talked about this in a previous episode. Someone that I work with when I was in a prior life, she was on the board. I've got 168 hours, RJ. Right. And so this is how I choose to use my hours in this week. Right. So feels like you've got a lot of balls in the air: family, work, philanthropic efforts. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm as busy as anybody else. It's you kind of look at other people and you think, okay, here's somebody that might have a much more challenging travel schedule, or it could be somebody that is divorced and they've got the responsibilities for all the kids plus work.
Right.
I'm always impressed with people in those situations. Like how do they balance it all?
Right.
I mean, I'm very fortunate that I have a very supportive family, and my wife Heather and I have been married 30 years. So I've been very fortunate I've picked the right partner.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she's a rock star, by the way.
She is.
Shout out to Heather.
Yeah, and she runs circles around me. So
that's why we marry up, right?
Exactly. But I do think that in terms of just time management, you get a little bit better as you age, and you realize that the work will always be there, but just really picking the priorities are the most important. You get a little better at that. And then I think also just like backward planning, you just become a little bit better at backward planning for things.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that. Unpack that a little bit.
I mean, I think it's a challenge for a lot of newer people coming into organizations. We hire a lot of kids, a lot of younger people that come out of college, and maybe our internship program, and you see the backward planning is somewhat of a struggle, I think, for some younger people. They just, until they get their sea legs and they understand how to backward plan, and I think likely a lot of them do the same thing in school. They kind of wait to the last minute. Oh, I got that final.
Right.
I'll study Saturday. I'll study Sunday, and they just don't do it.
Right.
So it's just an area that I think that we spend a lot of time on with client management, trying to manage multiple priorities and multiple timelines that oftentimes we're not in control of.
Totally.
Because we are an intermediary, right? So we have to rely on the client. We also have to rely on the carrier, and the processes in place there,
right?
And really just driving those timelines, And so you kind of think about certain experiences that you go through in terms of like what industries really deliver great client experiences. Mm-hmm. Insurance really isn't one of them.
Not traditionally.
Not traditionally, and it's just because of this nature of it's a very the product is inelastic, right? So when people need it, they pay attention to it.
Exactly.
Not a lot of choices. I mean, if you have an emergency, you have to go to the hospital. And are people really shopping or paying attention to price?
We're not really good consumers at that point, are we?
And the whole environment is fairly opaque. Mm-hmm. Like, where do you go for the right care?
Right.
So you know who to go to, how to access, and it's improving. But given the cost structure, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go out and buy an automobile. Tons of transparency.
Yeah. I see a lot of different list prices, right?
And a lot of shopping tools you can.
Right.
But when it comes to healthcare, it's very, very challenging for people to navigate that. And I think that's the part that I feel that for our younger generations coming into the workforce, and no matter where they're at, that backward planning and really making sure they're managing client expectations as best they can in an environment where you're rarely in control of the timeline.
Right. So do you put the kind of the flag in the ground at when the renewal needs to be done, or that's really the backward planning is right.
Like
so
when the renewals,
boom. And then kind of scaling back to your point, right? Because I got to talk to the underwriter, I got to talk to the client, I got to and balance all those and do it appropriately so that there's enough time to jump back and forth, right?
Yeah. And then, of course, because clients are all very different, you have some very large clients, you have smaller clients, different clients in their funding. clients struggle with this as well. Like, what's the cost increase going to be? How do we predict this?
Right.
How do we budget for it? And in many environments, it's become really challenging for clients. So yeah, it's not an easy environment today, and the healthcare environment is going to continue to be more challenged over the next several years.
Feels that way. Right?
Yeah, I don't know if we see that the cost increase is abating.
Right.
There's droves of people that are really entering the Medicare space, about 10 to 11,000.
Okay.
Every day are turning 65.
Really? Wow.
There's also some older generations staying in the workplace just because they don't have the retirement funds.
Right.
To retire.
Right.
Which puts extra pressure on employer plans, and because age is the largest predictor of health insurance cost.
Kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I think logically we would all agree to that, right? Mm-hmm. But there are also factors that kind of contribute to that too, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, age is probably the predominant
number one predictor.
Right. Yeah.
And then you think about, like, in your environment, you look at Medicare and Medicaid.
Right.
Providers can't really negotiate with Medicaid and Medicare.
Nope.
No negotiation.
Right.
So price is the price. There's only one other area that a provider can negotiate generally, and that's going to be on the commercial payer side.
Right.
So there's just this kind of natural kind of imperfection among pricing that isn't really quite, the economics of healthcare aren't fully understood.
Right.
Because the system is so complicated.
Yes.
And it's trillions of dollars that we have at stake at the United States, but it doesn't really yield the best outcomes.
Right. What does, so being part of MMA now, what kind of bandwidth, what kind of information do you get from their work, right? Mm-hmm. And they're at a lot of tables that, in a lot of rooms that I'm sure those conversations are being had kind of on a bigger picture, right? A more global, national picture. How does that impact kind of the day-to-day for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's really just there's a pretty robust level of information that we get around a range of health insurance, a range of risk management topics that you see, and so there's a lot of information. So I think navigating like what's really important becomes kind of a critical skill set because there's so much information.
Too much.
Yeah, it's almost too much.
Right.
And so it's what's really relevant to our teams, to our clients, and how do we sift through that and really find out what's important.
Right.
What I do think is valuable, there is a lot of information you can get. So if you can navigate that pretty quickly, it's very helpful because a lot of it is quite good. The quality of it is very high quality.
I'm sure. Right.
Right. So like, for instance, it might be something about pharmacy, and you might have questions about GLP-1s and the impact on GLP-1s. And the pharmacy teams and their clinical teams do a great job of just isolating, like, here's the impact of GLP-1s. Here's what we're seeing in the employer space. Here's who's adopting GLP-1 strategies and what is rational for certain clients.
Interesting.
So some of that information has been very helpful because in the past you'd have to really, like, how do you mine all that information?
Right.
And so now it's really at your fingertips. It's really just taking the time to be super curious.
Right.
And digesting the information in a way that you can convey it to clients.
Right. And help them as they're navigating those.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for those in our audience, the GLP-1s are the weight loss, right?
Weight loss and diabetic drugs. Yeah.
So, and it just, talking with peers that are, running agencies or C-suite folks, that's real on a lot of fronts, right? That's, and thankfully, folks are living a healthier life, right? But it's a costly.
I mean, some of we've all run into people that may have been on them, or maybe you suppose they're on them.
Right.
And some are very transparent. They'll just come out, I've been taking some weight loss drugs. And some of the weight loss is just miraculous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's great that those opportunities are there, right?
Yeah.
And they feel better about themselves. They're healthier, right? And so
very expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah, and most of the insurance companies at certain levels, certain clients just don't cover them.
Right, which is surprising to me, right? But I guess it's how it's classified, and
it's cost. It's primarily driven by cost,
right.
And then as more clinical evidence comes out that says they can be better for certain conditions, but Medicare treats them all very similarly.
Do they?
Yeah, and so I mean there'll be some expanded conditions like weight loss drugs with a secondary comorbidity.
Oh, interesting.
So like now there's a lot of studies coming out around sleep apnea and GLP-1s, so there'll probably be some expanded conditions that the GLP-1s will apply besides being diabetic, but strictly for weight loss, it just really hasn't been. Most firms, unless they're again larger and they have the choice,
right,
and then they have the the margins to pay for it, many clients are electing to not cover the weight loss
Okay,
drugs.
they'll go to this point, but not no further.
Because
right?
it's just such a burden on the health plan.
Right.
Because of the obesity issue.
It's real,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, as we talked about, right?
Yeah.
We're not a healthier, society, unfortunately,
Yeah.
right?
So hopefully the cost will come down. There's supposed to be an oral tablet comes out that'll
interesting.
lower. So hopefully, and it'll maybe drive more people that will continue to be on the drug and not taper off and not use the drug. And that's another issue for employers. They're like, look, if the cost is $1,000 a month to have somebody on the drug, and I have a turnover of X, or my average tenure is only going to be a couple years, we're not really seeing the benefits of the people becoming healthier. So how
help me understand?
Yeah, how are we going to pay for this? And that's kind of what the insurance companies are struggling with is, in terms of that. So I think that the testing and the data and all that will come out, and will probably be some pathways where more of those drugs will be covered. Right. But our hope is that the cost comes down.
Yeah. That's great.
But it's just another example of, employers are wrestling with the health insurance costs
completely.
And how do we help our employees land in a spot where the burden on them is not so high?
Right.
You think about the deductibles today, for most people,
it's significant.
I mean, Yeah, the average income in America, you look at 50,000, you say, well, if my deductible is 5,000,
right,
which a lot of employers have.
Exactly.
I mean, that's 10%.
Right, 10% of my gross pay, let alone my take home.
You got it. Yeah.
So it's real.
Yeah, and that's the part that I think pains most people in this space that are really involved with their clients and with employees, trying to help them understand what's the best route to go.
Right. And that's kind of what I think what I've seen when we're in the room together and it's the thought partnership, right? And really helping. Let's be thoughtful and strategic in how we're approaching this, right? Whatever this delta is that we need to make up, right? And so that our team still feels like they're supported in every way, shape, and form, right? But that's hard. So when you look at your team and your the folks that you work with more closely, as well as kind of Horton Group, how is the Horton Group kind of developing that young talent that you reference, right? You're bringing people in, right? And what does that look like? I'm just curious, how are you?
Yeah. So we used to have a pretty robust internship program.
Okay.
So we'd bring people into different parts of the division. Employee benefits, risk management, in our accounting department, as an example. Some of that was paused during the transition to Marsh, but Marsh is a really fantastic program.
Great.
And so its scale and its ability to really do it across the country is pretty impressive.
That's great.
Yeah. And so that's really probably one of our baseline ways to bring in and attract talent is through that internship program. And of course, we've got a lot of people that are like me that have been in the business for a long time that really appreciate the industry for what it is. And the fact that on the surface, most young people think insurance or they think about insurance jobs is pretty boring.
Right.
And we talked about that. That's how my impression was.
Right,
But then
totally.
you get into it and you realize that you're really providing such a critical need for employees and for employers, no matter what side of the insurance aisle you're on.
Right.
I mean, even today, we talk about cyber insurance.
Right. Yeah.
And we think about that risk and how that's become such a challenge for firms.
Right.
But 10 years ago, nobody was really on this.
No.
Yeah, but today you can't really operate a business without cyber insurance protection.
Right, exactly.
And the claims are complicated. The actors that are involved with these cyber events.
Right.
And just like you hear these, and I'm on the benefit side, and I hear these claims, I'm like, okay, so somebody got hacked, and there's like a cyber, Bitcoin that they want to release data. And
exactly.
Could this get any more complicated?
No.
Yeah.
I think the short answer is no. And gosh, I hope it stays where it is.
But could be a very exciting way for somebody that's in college that's thinking about certain jobs to say, hey, I have a proclivity to like technology.
Yes.
But I don't really want to sit at a desk and program. But I like this idea of understanding the broader environment.
How can I marry those?
Yeah.
Right.
So those are the opportunities that I think for young people that they sometimes don't really see. Mm-hmm. But we have enough employees at Horton and through Marsh that we're really trying to really help young people look at this as an industry that could be very valuable.
That's great.
Yeah.
So then, kind of dig a little bit deeper then, so if you bring in, I don't know, some number, 10 interns, 100 interns, whatever that is, what's the goal? Are you hoping to get 50% of those folks to join? 30%.
I mean, for the most part, I don't know if I know that at Marsh at this level, to be honest. But I think our goal is really to give them a good experience.
Right.
Help elevate our brand by saying, I had a good experience at Marsh.
Absolutely.
It helps with the brand.
Right.
And then more importantly, our ultimate goal is to get them to want to consider us as a first employer, employer of choice.
Right, yeah.
But I don't really know exactly. I know they hire lots. I don't really know the outcome of what percentage.
Yeah. But must be worthwhile if they keep doing it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But they also can rely on solid people like you who've been in the industry, and I'm sure you're an informal mentor, if not formal mentor, for a lot of those folks.
Oh yeah,
right?
And that's true. I mean, I think this is also kind of a craft business that you learn through the experiences of those around you, but also with the clients. It just takes time to ferment that. It takes time to really get those skills.
Right.
And so it's not anything you can just step into and learn right away, because it is a pretty complicated environment.
Right.
And so for the younger people, I've always kind of felt that the value for them is really the curiosity. If you come into a business like this and you can be super curious and you ask a lot of questions, good questions, you can excel in an environment. Mm-hmm. But it's a very stable environment. There's not insurance and generally the financial industry fairly stable because people keep the programs, they keep the products, even during downturns. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very stable industry.
It's part of the function of the organization, right? And so I love the curiosity piece. So how, were you always kind of that curious person, right? Or has that kind of developed?
No, I think I always was.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, it's a burden too, I think, at times, because sometimes I can go into a rabbit hole. But
raise your hand if
but I do think it's an environment that we see the complexity of the health insurance today in the way just track any. I mean, think about when you get your own bill or you get an EOB. It's really fascinating that we pay for something and nobody really knows if it's right.
True.
You're just entirely trusting that the bill that you get, it was coded correctly, and you don't really understand the bill.
No.
And you'll see, this is what it was, but this is the ultimate price you need to pay. And here's what the cost was, and you're like, nobody really knows if any of it's correct. If any of it was correct, it's kind of fascinating for the cost and what you're paying.
Correct. But again, for the most part, I'm not reaching into my pocket and pulling cash out, right? So so all of that is kind of getting handled somewhere else, and then ultimately I'm told whether I owe something or not, right? And so from that perspective, I think that's why we're really all bad, or I shouldn't say all. Many of us are poor healthcare consumers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's not so much, I think, that you're a poor consumer. It's that the industry drives you to be a poor consumer.
True.
Because
I've tried to be curious and I get the Heisman. Yeah. I get the stiff arm. Right. Like, nope.
you lose interest.
Well, because it's the path of least resistance,
yeah,
right? They keep saying no, right?
Yeah. Because you think about most things that you buy as a consumer, you're buying something and the transaction is occurring either before you have the event. Right?
True. Right.
Or nearly right after.
Right.
But it's not that you have the service and then you pay for it, months down the line.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. It's the old Seinfeld bit, right? But why would I pay for this? I already ate.
Yeah.
Like no, that's
exactly
right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. That's the bill for the meal. Mm-hmm. But I'm full. I don't want to eat anymore. Yeah. Right. No. Should prepay.
How about on your end? How is the insurance impacting Oak Leyden relative to your reimbursement that you get from just out of curiosity?
Sure. No, thank you. Thanks for asking. So the bulk of our support, our revenue comes from Illinois Department of Human Services. Those dollars are matched at the federal level through Medicaid. Mm-hmm. So we've all heard that there'll be cuts coming, right, to Medicaid in the next couple of years. Everything that I read, that we read, that we're told is the individuals that we support, individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, will not be impacted directly. The key word there is directly, right? And so if the state is receiving, depending on what you read, $5 billion less from the federal government via Medicaid payments, up to $10 billion less, and that's annually, Sean. Like that's not just a one-time deal, right? So we know the state of Illinois doesn't have excess cash to basically fund that. So so that indirect expense will probably end up impacting the work that we do and all of the community providers that do this work, right? But there's just a whole lot of uncertainty. The good news is right now, kind of we're moving along. We're kicking, right? And I think we're fortunate. Oakline's in a pretty good space, financially and fiscally. We've done some good things. We made some good decisions. We have good partners that we work with on a lot of our key expenses. But yeah, there's something out there. I was chatting with someone in one of my advocacy trips to Springfield. And we're, the analogy that we both came up with, and this was one of our legislators, that we could tell there's a train coming, just can't tell if it's on the track that we're on or the track next to us, right? But there's definitely a train coming, right? And so, we'll see where that leads. But ultimately, we have to keep doing what we do best, and that's, support the individuals in our care. And if we support our team, then we know that they will care for the individuals that live in our homes, that attend our day programs, the little kiddos that our therapists, support in their homes. So it's that there's just that level of uncertainty, and nothing really we can do about it right now. Yeah.
In your environment, do you find that the most challenging roles for you to hire are for the SILAs?
Yes. So our frontline, in the residential program, it's less than what it was. I think when I first joined in the throes of COVID, it was a very transactional role, right? And we've gotten better because we've been able to pay folks better, and that's because of the reimbursements that we get from the state for the work that we do. But it feels like it's tipping a little bit in the wrong direction. It's becoming a little bit more. We're seeing more turnover, and I can't really put a finger on it. Trying to really kind of dive into that and see what that is. But ultimately, we've got some really good people that care deeply about the individuals that are in our care.
Yeah.
And and we're fortunate that we can offer folks insurance, right? And that we can pay them a better wage. It's, maybe not full living wage, but we're getting there, right? And it's not just minimum wage anymore, right? So the state has stepped up appropriately, but there's more work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and it really is. When you think about just the work that they're doing, I mean, it is amazing. We obviously work in a financial services business, so a lot of the work we do, a lot of people can do it from home.
Right,
They're in a cushy office. Right. But anytime we go out to clients, whether it's Oak Leyden and we see the challenges that your employees deal with, or you walk out to another client, and you might go to a chicken plant processing plant,
right?
And you get a tour, and you're like, "This is a tough job."
This is right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have some really, really
absolutely
challenging jobs,
right. Yeah. And so so again, I think I'd love to kind of go back to the curiosity piece, right? Mm-hmm. That so where did that spark for you, right? And when you look back, was that something within your family growing up? Was that, in a classroom?
I'm a twin, but we're kind of the Irish triplet. So I'm a twin. My other brother was a year older.
That's right.
So I'm sure there had to be some element of just competing for parents' attention that drove us to be, maybe a little bit more curious.
Right.
And maybe just competing for resources is
right.
Maybe that's where the genesis is
that's
from.
Ultimately exactly.
I'm not really sure, but
right.
Yeah.
But
I think that is really going to principally be a key trait for a lot of young people.
Right.
That curiosity. Because if you're curious, you're going to be interested in learning more, and it's just that lifelong learning, particularly in industries that change all the time.
Right. Well, and I'm sorry, what industry isn't changing all the time, right? And I think that's where, kind of you were laughing about the boring insurance industry or the boring banking or whatever. Like, I don't think any industry is boring these days, right? It's not changing, right? And so much of it, we like to think that we can control things, but so much of it is external in the environment, and how are we reacting to it, and proactively engaging with it.
Yeah, I mean it's an area that in our world with insurance, I guess if we back up and we say, well, what's the challenge? It really is this this environment where you have the insurance companies, then you also have tax,
Right.
and you also have legal.
Right.
So it's the combination of all three of those.
Yes.
And really with all the, just like in Illinois, they just passed this law that said you can add parents to your health plan.
Right.
Step parents or parents. I mean, it's unique.
Pretty amazing,
Yeah.
right?
The only state right now.
Illinois is the only state
that allows it? Yeah. And so, although it's not going to be something that we're going to see a lot of people adding their parents or step parents to the plan, it's a privilege, right? And there are strict requirements in order for you to add your parent to the plan in terms of like support and income levels.
Right.
But it's just another thing that is a burden on the employers to have to deal with and say, well, how do we address this? What's the implication? What's the cost? What are the IT implications? How does it impact payroll? How does it impact, all those things?
All of those things.
Yeah, and it's going to be, it's probably going to be a very little impact at the end of the day in terms of, hey, this legislation came down, it was passed, but what was the real impact?
Right. The actual numbers.
Yeah, and the law of unintended consequences, like how much time and energy have we put into this versus what is the real result? And then it's just the curiosity of really trying to understand, okay, how is this going to impact employers? How do we support them with this change and really help them land to a spot that they feel comfortable with what their new requirement is,
Yeah.
So.
What so kind of taking that from kind of the legislative side, right? What is Horton or Marsh McLennan? When you look at kind of the ancillary services, ancillary benefits, right? To separate yourselves from kind of the rote nature or the commoditization of insurance. Like, how are you guys adding value, or what do you see kind of coming down the pipe that folks like me or folks that are watching right now be like, oh, I got to keep an eye on that.
I would say it really is framed around different clients and different sizes for clients, right? So because clients at different sizes have different choices in the marketplace. Larger clients have more options for how they fund, whether they self-fund or if they want to, elect to be, through more independent providers rather than having, just a standard kind of shell plan from a fully insured carrier.
Yep.
So there's more options there, but I really think at some point, our industry has to evolve a little bit, and we have to evolve in terms of how do we maybe learn to get compensated and have more arrangements. Very, very different based on the client size and the segmentation.
Yeah.
But how can we start getting compensation or learning to work with our clients in a way that we're maybe paid in a different manner in terms of how we save them money.
Right.
And how do we improve employee experiences?
Right.
And so that's going to be, and we see that a little bit in the marketplace today, that there's a lot of point-to-point solutions that have come out.
Interesting.
For
instance.
So you think about like telehealth vendors and mental health providers.
Yes.
One of the things that we see is, when mental health became part of the legislation in the George Bush administration.
Yes.
When that got passed as part of the Medicare Modernization Act, they also came back and said, hey, we're going to allow mental health to be paid just like any other part of your health plan. So if you're going to pay for maternity a certain way, that the mental health has to be paid the same way.
Yep.
So when we think about
it on even footing, right?
And because there's a lot of restrictions on mental health before, residential treatment or how many days you could see a therapist or what was considered
folks are skeptical, right? They didn't know, right? To kind of to your point earlier, right? Mm-hmm. That's not kind of what we all grew up in. So it's just uncertainty and skepticism, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think people were very reluctant to get the care they needed.
Right,
because
absolutely.
of the stigmatization of mental health. So that's changed, which is very good. But at the same time, I think just the confluence of that law changing, it also kind of minted billion-dollar industries.
Yes.
Because before it was so restrictive.
Right.
And so then you kind of have to kind of just follow the dollars a little bit and say, well, now we have an industry where all the mental health dollars are paid by health plans with no restriction as compared to what they were doing before.
Right.
So are we surprised that there's so many mental health providers compared to before? All these new companies coming out with, and all the advertising we see. We see a lot of advertising around, oh, hey, you having an issue, you need to talk to somebody.
Right.
Some of it I think is very good, but also there has to be some understanding that there probably is also an overutilization in that environment.
Right.
Because the dollars weren't there before. And so now the question is that just a result of everybody has more mental and behavioral health issues.
Right.
We certainly see it in the data. We certainly know younger kids are more challenged with mental health and anxiety than ever before.
Right.
Generationally, that's changed.
That's right.
Sometimes we look at it and say, hey, is the smoking gun of our generation going to be, all the iPhones, all the technology,
Yes.
all the social media, all the things impacting young people's brains in a way that previous generations, maybe present company excluded.
Exactly. Of course. Right.
But maybe that's going to be the smoking gun of this generation that says, just like cigarettes were maybe for our generation, that said, oh, you go back and look at cigarette and tobacco ads. It's just kind of funny. You're like, these doctors recommend Camel cigarettes. They're the best for you. And
Do
you're
they?
like,
Right?
And people would, you go back and say people just didn't know.
Right. Oh yeah. I would tell the story. My mom, who passed away long ago, she was a lifetime smoker, right? And when she had a cold, she would smoke menthol cigarettes, right? Because she thought that helped, right?
Yeah.
Like, seriously? And I'd normally be the one running to White Hen to get to get the cigs, right? And so, you just think, oh boy, that probably didn't work too well, right?
It's funny that you say. My mom used to tell us a story that when she would go in, when she was expecting with my brother, to see her OBGYN, they'd have a cigarette together. He'd give her, and she was pregnant. He'd give her a cigarette in the physician's office for the appointment.
Right.
They'd have a cigarette. He said, "How are you doing, Kath?"
Right. Yeah.
And they'd have a cigarette together.
Oh, yeah.
If you think about that, that's not that long ago.
That's not that long ago. Exactly.
So I think this issue of like a lot of the point to point solutions and the things that employers can wrestle with, I think some of them are very meaningful. And so that's another just area that we kind of watch in terms of like what is going to really be impactful for an employer group and for employees.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them that have come out of the ecosystem that just weren't there 10 years ago.
No. So, how do we educate our employees? How do we educate, communities about some of these challenges that again, Marsh McLennan has invested a lot of money to identify certain, traits, certain, habits that are forming, right? And is there a push to do more of that from the corporate perspective?
I mean,
right?
there is, and I would say that at times we're very good at it,
Mm-hmm.
and other times I think we really struggle with providing better education. Part of it is this environment of when you walk into an employer group, you have some people that just aren't healthcare users at all.
Right.
I mean, you think about your youth, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when you were young, did you really think about your health insurance?
of course not.
So
Right,
you just didn't, right? And then there's other people that are, acute users of the plan or really high utilizers, and they sometimes understand the ecosystem better than the people that aren't in the system.
Right. So true. Right.
So you think about like a parent that has special needs, right? And they might say, hey, my child needs regular visits or they need regular visits for autism.
Right.
Sometimes they understand that environment way better than the people that are even trying to support the children.
Right.
Because they deal with the insurance. They understand the economic impact on them.
Right.
Or maybe they were being supported by Medicaid, and then they went to a commercial plan and back, and they've been through that, and they kind of really have a better understanding of the environment.
Right.
So we struggle, I think, in terms of really finding the right impact at the moment of truth for employers, because it's when the employee enters the healthcare system for the very first time, they're like, all right, I don't really know how to navigate this. And that's when they need the support.
Absolutely.
And then it's like, well, and because of HIPAA and some other things, it's like, well, they may call up and say, well, what's the situation, right? And like, oh, do you have a copy of your bill? Or can you share more with me about what is being billed? And they don't know. They can't describe it. So I think that's the challenge that we see.
Yeah. So is there a way to kind of sprinkle some pixie dust or whatever and create a more curious healthcare consumer, right? To kind of go back on the curiosity. It helps on your end. I think it helps, the work that we do, that we're curious, right? And I think just people, we should all be more curious, right? But I think there's some value somewhere in there, kind of in the healthcare consumer world, right? That if we were more curious about but I think it's the hierarchy is the challenge, right? That, if you're my doc, I'm not really challenging you in whatever our conversation is about my blood work or whatever, right?
So. We're hoping that there's going to be more transparency in pricing, particularly for shoppable experiences.
Yes.
If somebody's coming in and they're going to have, and I understand there's some people that find this challenging, but I think the tools are going to get better. I think there'll be better mobile applications for somebody to say, look, if you're going in and you need this particular procedure, here's what your cost is.
Right.
Like if a mom's going to go in and deliver a baby, at some point they should be able to understand what that implication is going to be in the cost.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of known what the procedures are going to be. Now, that doesn't mean that something could change.
Absolutely.
You might have a C-section during the delivery.
Sure.
But at some point,
70% or 80%, whatever that number is, should pretty much be within this pretty tight range.
So we're hoping that those transparency tools improve. There are some areas of that is improving, not as rapid as we'd like to see. And then I think also there has to be some kind of like maybe within the high school and even in college, like in high school, really giving people the background on what health insurance is. Because coming out, they don't have any idea of what it is. And then when they aren't really users of the system.
Right.
Sometimes if you come out of high school, you might not be a user of the healthcare system for decades.
Absolutely.
And then the very first time you need to access the system or you don't really understand how the healthcare financing, they're just kind of lost in the environment. Right. So we'd like to see some of that happening, maybe more at a grassroots level, where there are more people getting a better understanding of it. But even when you hire new employees, they're concerned about their pay.
Oh, sure.
What are my hours? What are my job? And if the health insurance is they don't use it,
can I work remote?
They don't even really think about it.
No. Well, and if they're under 26, they don't have to think about it, right? Because they're still on their parents.
Yeah.
By and large, they're still on their parents, right? And is that a number that's going to stay, right? Is there any chatter about that moving up or down?
We don't see that changing.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Nice.
And so another area for some families that they have to contend with, right? Like, do I keep my children on my plan? Do I change it?
Right.
Do they go off on their own employer's plan?
Right.
And just through inertia, there's a lot of people that just make bad decisions around health insurance.
Unfortunately,
it's unfortunate.
Right. Yeah. So how can we educate our folks better, right? And to be that, whenever we go through our renewals, right, we always find like, okay, we got to educate folks, and it's such a condensed period, right? And nobody, frankly, unfortunately, nobody really is interested in learning about insurance, right? Be great if we could do lunch and learns, right? And I'm sure I know you would be very happy to do that.
We've tried a lot of these over time, and I think that we're really trying to meet our clients.
Yes,
with a variety of things. Some really like a recording with a presentation. But I think we also are kind of evolving and seeing that just because of the younger generations, like short snippets, like just about, hey, today we're just going to talk about debt insurance. Right. It's just like a quick 30-second video.
Yeah.
I think those are going to emerge through a lot of educational support for employees because their attention spans are not very large.
Right.
And across the spectrum.
Are you saying they're not watching this full podcast? Is that what you're
saying?
saying?
I don't think they're going to watch the full podcast. Yeah. But I think that is going to be helpful if we can really educate with very short videos that people can watch and make them super accessible for them. So when they enter the system, they want to understand why does this happen this way? Or what does this mean?
Right.
That they have the resources available just to learn and to self-educate a little bit.
Yeah.
but it certainly is a challenge.
Do you see that coming? Is that
we see parts of it today in our environment, but what we see in the multi-generational workforces is that there's also sometimes this dumbbell effect, right? So a lot of employers have we've got some younger employees. Mm-hmm. They like to learn this way. They don't really. They would prefer to have, more like educational videos. They don't really want to meet with anybody. Right. But then on the flip side,
heaven forbid.
Yeah, exactly. But on the flip side, we have
I want this, right?
Yeah, we have other generational employees that might be a little bit older that would rather just, hey, can I just have a quick conversation?
Exactly. Right.
You know what's fascinating? I remember reading recently that I think in grocery stores they see this phenomena that when people enter the grocery store line, sometimes there'll be a checkout line with a person and nobody's in the line. And then they have the self-checkout.
Right.
And
just
people will stay in the self-checkout to avoid going through the line with the person because they don't want to talk to anybody.
Right.
Right.
I think I was that person last week at Jewel. Yeah. I was because I never looked to see what the checkout lanes look like. I always just gravitate to the self checkout.
But when you need help, but again, if you need help, and you're trying to figure something out, there's where's the support?
Where's the support? Right.
Yeah. So
can I pick up the phone?
We have a lot of work to do in our industry to get better at that.
Yeah.
Just because I think we recognize it's such a challenge for people to access, whether it's health insurance or it's dental or whatever the case may be, life insurance, disability. There's a lot of programs that are very helpful for employees. Mm-hmm. but they don't understand how any of it works until they need it.
Right.
It's that moment of truth where I think we have to really step up our game and do a better job.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't disagree, right? I think it's a very astute observation that, I think we all have to kind of figure out how we're educating our teams, right? And so that, those life challenges, those life where life gets in the way, so to speak. How are we all navigating them, right? How am I supporting you well enough, right? Are you supporting your team, right? So all of that I think is very real, right?
And I think fragmentation in communication is another thing that we see, right? I mean, there's email, there's phone calls. Sometimes there's email and phone calls. There's texting.
Right.
There's Teams messaging.
Yep.
So sometimes you just think about that environment and I think it's exhausting on a lot of employees.
Yeah.
Because they're getting voicemails, they're getting emails, they're getting attachments, they're getting videos. They have Teams, Zoom, multiple platforms.
Very real, right?
Yeah. Where when I first came out of school, it was like, maybe you get an email.
Maybe I don't. I didn't.
Pretty rare.
And emails weren't a thing when I got out of college.
And your voicemail was your lifeline, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I had an 800 number that I would call to get voicemails, right? And so that was crazy. A little different, right? When let's how do we tie a bow on this, right? Mm-hmm. So when you think about kind of the impact that you're making, that the Horton Group is making, what kind of feeds you? Like what's that energy when you think today's going to be a good day, or more importantly, kind of when you look back, like, gosh, December was a good month because right.
I think there's a few things. I think for us, it's really about making sure that I think we're just managing client expectations really well, right? And this is an industry that notoriously has not been good at it. Mm-hmm. Across the health insurance ecosystem, most often, expectations. You think about it from a provider side, right? I mean, most experiences that even patients have is very poor. Not just understanding the insurance, but even the patient experience is poor.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Shortages. You go in, you're waiting in the waiting room for a long time. Nobody's really managing the expectations.
No.
Right?
No.
So I think that's
because they haven't had to, frankly.
And when we do that well, I think we feel good, right? And we look back and say, hey, we managed that really well. We managed the expectations. I don't always have good analogies, but I kind of think of health insurance as for a buyer, right? So like when you have to buy your health insurance, it's almost like having the water heater break at the house, right? Like if the refrigerator goes out, you're like, okay, that's bad.
Right.
And we had to buy a new fridge. Wasn't really in the budget.
Right.
But at least we got a new fridge. It looks nice. It's upgraded. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
But like the water heater, like nobody's excited about. Right? And so...
But it's rather integral,
it's integral
to the comfort of one's home.
You need it. You can't say no. And so I think our role is also like making sure, like, okay, if your water heater goes out, our goal is to come in, be responsive, manage expectations.
Right.
We want to make sure you understand what the implication is if we change it. What are your options? None of them are options you like. Option A is X, option B, and they're all expensive.
Right, yep.
You don't like any, but your satisfaction with the provider coming in to give you the options is going to be, do they manage your expectations?
Right.
Did they come back and give you options? Even if you didn't like any of the options, you settle on an option that you feel, this is my best situation.
At least meets, yes, right?
Yeah, none of them are good.
No.
But this is the optimal decision for me.
Right.
And I have to get a new water heater.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where...
I can't not.
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of our, I think, clients feel that way. It's like, look, we can't not have employee benefits.
Right.
We want to balance this tightrope between employee satisfaction and cost.
Yeah.
And how do we settle in on what the right decision is for the organization? And it's really challenging for CEOs and CFOs.
Right.
And so our role is just like, if we can do that better and manage those expectations better, then I think we look back at like in December and say, we feel good that we did the best we could, given uncertainty, right? Because oftentimes our clients we don't even know what the pricing might be for certain size clients.
Absolutely.
Hey, what do you think our renewal is going to be? I'm like,
right.
We don't have any data. We just don't know.
Right.
And that uncertainty creates a lot of challenges for our clients.
Yes.
So that's kind of where we that's really want to shift is how do we improve the education for employees?
Right. Love that.
And really being there at the moment of truth they need it.
Yeah.
And we have so much work to do there. Right. And then secondarily, managing those expectations for clients in a way that I think we're always on top of it.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, again, Sean, thanks for coming out. Thanks for joining us on the intersection.
Yeah, really appreciate
I think our worlds are such that we're going to keep intersecting, right? We're going to keep, one street coming this way, one street coming this way. And I think the work is important. Again, we're grateful for the partnership. And ultimately, our folks, our team feels it when we have a good partner like you guys. So
thank you. Grateful for that. And really, I know you can't survive without having good insurance and good benefits.
Right.
So we're grateful for that, but at the same time, we're super grateful to Oak Leyden and to your leadership and everybody at Oak Leyden for really taking care of people, the people that are really at most need in the community. It really is impressive. I mean, I think sometimes when I come to the events and I see your employees, I think last year at the event, I ran into a couple of your individuals that really were house parents taking care of people.
Right.
And just great personalities. I mean, they were engaged. They were very, I think, thoughtful and about the people that you care for.
Right.
But sometimes you sit back and you think, those are really tough jobs. And thank God we have people that are willing to do these.
Absolutely.
And you guys have a great mission. And I mean, you've done a fabulous job. I think you're just naturally good at what you do.
No, I appreciate that. That's kind.
But it's such a need in the community.
The important work is being done, in the homes, right?
No question.
And I joke when I came on board, during COVID, our folks work in a home. They don't work from home, right? So they work in one of our 11 residential homes, right?
Yeah.
So that's that work, and they keep showing up, and it's really great. So thanks.
It's taxing work.
It is. It's hard work. On a good day, it's hard work.
Yeah, and RJ, I tell you, Marsh would love to do something for those employees and for the members in the home. So if we can get pizzas for all your solo homes, we'd love to do that and make a donation.
All right.
And just,
we've
let us
got
know.
some witnesses here.
But we'd love to do that
awesome.
for the holidays.
Sean, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining this episode of The Intersection. And Sean Dauber from the Horton Group, a Marsh McLennan agency, MMA. And like us, subscribe to the channel, and have a great day.